There are a number of stipulations that I'm going to read. Mr. George, you want me to read them all at one time, or you want those read before you introduce the videos?
Your Honor, it might be a little cleaner or clearer if we were to do them one at a time.
Okay. Then you may proceed, Mr. George.
Your Honor, as it relates to what's been previously marked for identification LN, which is a video of Target from June 30th of 2008, I believe that, well, the state and the defense have entered into a stipulation. Would you care to read those, or do you want me to read those?
It would be admitted in evidence noting previously raised objections. And the stipulation is as follows. The copy of the video surveillance recorded at Target at 718 McGuire Boulevard, Orlando, Florida on June 30th, 2008 is a true and accurate representation of the business records of Target. The parties have agreed to this fact, and it should be considered as true in your deliberations. It will be received in evidence as what, Madam Clerk? All right.
Your Honor, may I publish that at this time?
You may publish.
Your Honor, apparently we're having a multitude of technical issues. What I would suggest at this point is just to go through all the stipulations and have them entered, and hopefully at a later time we can publish them.
All of them have technical issues? Because the second one may work. You want to try that?
All right, the next one, Mr. George.
Thank you, Judge. The next one has previously been marked for Exhibit LO, states LO, which is a video from J.C. Penney, also on June 30th of June 30th, 2008.
Noted in previous objections, they will be admitted. It will be admitted as states numbered. This is the following stipulation, members of the jury. The copy of the video surveillance recorded at J.C. Penney's on June 30th, 2008 is a true and accurate representation of the business records of J.C. Penney's. The parties have agreed to this fact, and it should be considered as true in your deliberations.
Your Honor, I've been told that this particular video will work, so I would ask that we go ahead and publish this one.
You may publish.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, the state would move what's been previously marked for identification LP, which is a J.C. Penney video from July 1st of 2008, into evidence.
Noting previous objections, it would be admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the following stipulation. The copy of the video surveillance recorded at J.C. Penney's on July 1st, 2008 is a true and accurate representation of the business records of J.C. Penney's. The parties have agreed to this fact, and it should be considered as true in your deliberations.
Thank you, Judge. At this time, the state would ask to publish this particular video.
You may publish.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, the state would move what has been previously marked for identification LQ, which is a video from IKEA on July 5th of 2008. As the state's next in line.
Noting previous objections, it will be received in evidence as State's Exhibit numbered. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the following stipulation. The copy of the video surveillance recorded at IKEA on July 5th, 2008 is a true and accurate representation of the business records of IKEA. The parties have agreed to this fact, and it should be considered as true in your deliberations.
Thank you, sir. May I publish?
You may publish.
Thank you, sir. Or not. Your Honor, at this time, the state would move what has been previously marked for identification LR, which is a target video from July 7th of 2008.
Noted in previous objections, it will be received in evidence as states numbered. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is the following stipulation. The copy of the video surveillance recorded at Target 3770 North Goldenrod Road, Winter Park, Florida, on July 7, 2008, is a true and accurate representation of the business records of Target. The parties have agreed to this fact, and it should be considered as true in your deliberations.
Thank you, sir. May I publish?
You may publish.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, at this time, the state would move what has previously been marked for identification LS. It's a video from Target on July 8th of 2008, as states next in line.
Noted in previous objections, it will be entered in evidence as states numbered. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the following stipulation. The copy of the video surveillance recorded at Target 325 North Alafaya Trail, Orlando, Florida, on July 8, 2008, is a true and accurate representation of the business records of Target. The parties have agreed to this fact, and it should be considered as true in your deliberations.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I publish?
You may publish.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, the state would move what has previously been marked for identification LT, which is a target video from July 10th of 2008 into evidence as the state's next in line.
Noted in previous objections, it will be received in evidence as states numbered. Ladies and gentlemen, the following stipulation. The copy of the video surveillance recorded at Target 325 North Ophelia Trail, Orlando, Florida, on July 10th, 2008, is a true and accurate representation of the business records of Targets. The parties have agreed to this fact, and it should be considered as true in your deliberations.
Thank you, sir. May I publish?
You may publish.
Thank you, sir.
Objections, Judge?
I said,
I'm sorry, I may have not heard it.
so the record will be clear, is noted in previous objections. Thank you, sir. You may publish.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, at this time, the state would move what has previously been marked for identification LU, which is a target video from July 10th of 2008, into evidence as the state's next in line.
Noting previous objections, it would be entered in evidence as states numbered. Ladies and gentlemen, the following stipulation. The copy of the video surveillance recorded at Target 3770 North Goldenrod Road, Winter Park, Florida, on July 10th, 2008 is a true and accurate representation of the business records of Target. The parties have agreed to this fact, and it should be considered as true in your deliberations.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it be published?
You may publish.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, at this time, the state would move what has been previously marked for identification LV, which is a video from Winn-Dixie on July 12th of 2008 into evidence as the state's next in line.
Noting previous objections, it would be admitted in evidence. It states numbered. Ladies and gentlemen, the following stipulation. The copy of the video surveillance recorded at Winn-Dixie on July 12th and July 15th, 2008 is a true and accurate representation of the business records of Winn-Dixie. The parties have agreed to this fact, and it should be considered as true in your deliberations.
May I publish, Your Honor?
You may publish.
Thank you. And Your Honor, we'd like to publish the next Winn-Dixie 7/15/2000.
You may publish.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, apparently we're having some technical issues with that one. May I ask that if we can get those technical issues resolved, we can publish it at a later time?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, the state would move what has been previously marked for identification LW, which is a Bank of America video from July 15th of 2008.
Noting previous objections, it would be admitted into evidence. It states exhibit numbered. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the following stipulation. The copy of the video surveillance recorded at Bank of America on July 15, 2008 is a true and accurate representation of the business records of Bank of America. The parties have agreed to this fact, and it should be considered as true in your deliberations.
Provided the technology cooperates, Your Honor, may I publish?
You may.
Thank you. Again, Your Honor, we'd like to publish that at a
You may
later
publish.
time.
At a later time?
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move what has been previously been marked for identification LX. It's a Blockbuster video from July 15th of 2008 into evidence as the state's next in line.
Noting previous objections, it would be admitted into evidence. It states exhibit numbered. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have the following stipulation. The copy of the video surveillance taken from the video recorded at Blockbuster Video on July 15, 2008 is a true and accurate representation of the business records from Blockbuster Video. The parties have agreed to this fact, and it should be considered as true in your deliberations.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Sorry, the audio cut out. Can you repeat that?
District Manager for Amscott Financial,
How long have you been employed with Amscott?
5 years.
What type of a business is that?
We are a financial institution.
Are you employed at a specific location?
Not at this point. I run 16 stores.
Okay. Back in June and July of 2008, were you employed at a specific Amscott location?
Yes, I was.
Where was that?
Goldenrod in Colonial.
The Amscott at Goldenrod and Colonial,
Yes.
would you recognize it? Were you to see it again?
Yes, the Amscott at Goldenrod in Colonial.
All right. May I have HK for identification? Just a little bit. Can you see a photograph in front of you, ma'am?
Yes.
Do you recognize what is depicted in the photograph?
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize it as?
It's the location where I used to work.
Okay. The Amscot at Goldenrod and Colonial?
Yes.
Is that photograph a fair and accurate representation of the, at least part of the exterior of that Amscot?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, I would seek to introduce States HK for identification into evidence as the next numbered exhibit.
What says the defense?
No objections, Judge.
Be received in evidence as states numbered.
May that item be published to the jury while the witness testifies, Your Honor.
You may publish.
Ma'am, there are some other businesses that are located next to this Amscot, is that correct, over
Yes.
this side? If you can see what I'm marking with the telestrator.
Yes.
Okay, what is that?
It's a Papa John's and a Quiznos.
Are there any other businesses within that small plaza?
No.
May I have HL? All right, I have another photograph, HL, for identification for you to look at. Can you see that on your
Yes.
monitor?
Yes, I do.
Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes.
What do you recognize it to be?
It's part of the parking lot of the branch.
Is that photograph a fair and accurate representation of that portion of the Amscot and the parking lot?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, I would seek to introduce States HL for identification into evidence as the state's next numbered exhibit.
What says the defense?
No objections, Your Honor.
It be received in evidence as states numbered.
Your Honor, permission to publish to the jury.
You may publish.
Ma'am, can you explain what we're looking at?
The parking lot of the Amscot.
Okay. What is, got it. What's back here behind the Amscot?
There's a Sam's Club.
And this item that I've circled in pink, what is that?
The dumpster.
Okay. Does your business utilize that dumpster?
Yes.
Do you have knowledge as to whether or not the other businesses that you mentioned, the Papa John's and the Quiznos, utilize that dumpster?
Yes, they do.
Okay, unpublished. May I have HM for identification? Thank you. Can you see what's been marked as HM for identification?
Yes.
All right. What is it?
Just a parking, more parking spaces.
All right. Is this part of the front of the Amscot?
Yes, it's actually to the side.
All right. In what is now States 30 in evidence, we saw a dumpster. Is this a closer view of the dumpster as well as a portion of that parking lot?
Yes, it is.
Is it a true and accurate representation of what that section of the parking lot looks like at the Amscot where you were employed in 2008.
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, I would seek to introduce HM for identification into evidence.
It will be received in evidence as states numbered.
Permission to publish?
You may publish.
Ms. Sanchez, let me direct your attention to June 27th of 2008. Were you working that day at the Amscot at the corner of University and Goldenrod?
Yes,
What would your work hours have been that date?
from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
At any point in time on that date, did you notice a white Pontiac Sunfire at your establishment?
Yes, I did.
Where did you notice it to be at your workplace?
It was parked right next to the dumpster.
All right. I believe you have access to the telestrator as well up there. If you could put an X or an arrow marking the direction in which the vehicle was facing next to the dumpster. All right. What is it that you've tried to illustrate for us?
That's where the car was parked at.
All right. Was the car parked back end in or front end into that space?
Back end.
Was it parked straight into the spot or was it slightly askew?
No, it was parked straight.
Did you see anyone at or near the vehicle?
No,
Did you see when the vehicle was parked there?
no.
On that date, June 27th of 2008, did you go up to the vehicle for any purpose?
No, I didn't.
Did you do anything with the vehicle that date other than take notice of its presence?
No,
Was the vehicle there when you left work that day?
yes,
Did you return to work the next day, June 28th?
yes.
Right? What hours would you have worked that date?
7 to 2,
Was that a Saturday?
Saturday.
Was the vehicle there on Saturday when you arrived for
Yes.
work at 7?
Yes, it was.
Did you see anyone get out of the vehicle?
No,
Did you see anyone at or near the vehicle?
no.
Did you go up to the vehicle on that date?
Yes, I did.
What did you do?
I wrote down the tag number and I walked around the vehicle.
Did you touch the vehicle in any way, shape, or form?
No,
When you said you went up to the vehicle, explain to us what you did.
I walked to the vehicle to get the tag number so I can report it as an abandoned vehicle. And I also just walked around to see if there was any notes or anything that would indicate that somebody had broke down.
All right. You're talking about somebody leaving a note on the windshield or somewhere visible inside the car
Yes,
that would indicate that they were coming back.
yes.
Okay. Did you see anything like that?
No,
So did you look inside the vehicle?
yes, I did.
What were you able to see, if anything, inside that you recall at this time?
I don't remember much. I know it was a little messy inside. I remember seeing a blanket in the back seat.
Other than being a blanket, do you recall whether or not there's any more specific description of what the blanket looked like?
No,
Did you try the door handles?
no,
Once you wrote down the tag number, did you use that information in any way?
Yes, I called the Orlando Police Department, non-emergency, to report there was a vehicle abandoned in a parking lot.
Okay. Is that part of the policy and procedure of the AMSCOT to report cars that people don't retrieve?
Yes, it is. We called before we towed the car, just to ensure that it wasn't reported as stolen.
Did you receive information that it had not been reported stolen?
Yes, they say it was not reported.
Once you've received that sort of information, do your policies and procedure require you to take some other steps to achieve the removal of the vehicle?
Yes, at that moment, I notified my compliance officer, and he told me to wait one more day before I would tow the car.
Okay. Does the AMSCOT, to your knowledge, have a contract with a local towing company?
Yes, Johnson,
Johnson's?
yes.
So on Saturday, June 28th, based on instructions given to you, you did not call for the tow?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Did you do that on Sunday, June 29th?
No, I was off on Sunday.
Did you return to work on Monday, June 30th?
Yes, I did.
Was the vehicle still there?
Yes.
Since the vehicle was still there, did you take some action?
Yes, I did call the tow company.
Did you call Johnson's, as
Johnson's.
you had earlier indicated?
Yes, I did.
Did it appear to you that over the course of those 3 days, the 27th, the 28th, and then when you returned on the 30th, that the car had moved from its position in that spot?
No.
On either of those 3 days, did you see anyone get out of the car?
No.
Did you see anyone at or near the car?
No.
So once you called Johnson's, did they arrive?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you go out to the car to assist them with the tow in any way?
No, I didn't.
Did you observe them towing the vehicle away?
Yes.
When you came to work on the 30th, aside from calling for the tow company, did you go up to the vehicle?
No, I didn't.
You said on Saturday, June 28th, that you approached the vehicle, took the tag number, looked inside. Did you notice whether or not there was any odor emanating or coming from any part of the vehicle?
No.
Did you notice whether or not there was any odor emanating from that area?
Yes, but since it was it was parked next to the dumpster, so it was just a normal smell for that area.
Okay. Are you telling the jury that since there's a dumpster there, if you're in that spot or in that area, there's a smell?
Sustained, rephrase the question.
If you're in that parking spot, is there a smell in that vicinity?
Yes, there is.
Does AMSCOT have surveillance cameras?
Yes.
Do you know if they were working on June 27, 28?
I don't know. We don't manage that from the branch level.
Is that something that you would have access to?
No.
At the branch?
No.
Where would that information be obtained?
Our corporate office.
Did you have to sign paperwork for Johnson's Wrecker once they removed the vehicle?
Yes.
Did you see the vehicle again after that?
No.
Did anyone come into the branch while you were there inquiring about the vehicle?
No.
That's all the questions I have for the witness. Thank you, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Good morning, Ms. Sanchez.
Morning.
I wanted to ask you about the cameras that are there. Can we have Exhibit B? Thank you. Thank you, Mario. Your Honor, can we publish this to the jury? It's already been admitted. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that's okay. Now, the cameras that are there's on several areas, correct? There are several cameras,
Yes.
and they're on each corner.
Not sure where exactly. I don't remember.
Do you see where the car is, the silver car is parked here?
Yes.
And do you see a camera there up on that corner of the
Yes.
building?
Yes.
Isn't there another camera on the other side of the corner?
I do not know.
As far as your knowledge as to the cameras, there are multiple cameras, right?
Yes.
And this is a location where there's sometimes a significant amount of cash,
It could be, yes.
and that's there for your security.
Yes.
And that would include cameras inside
Yes.
and cameras outside.
Yes.
And these cameras, they're visual to the public, right?
Yes, they are.
And they sometimes act as a deterrent for crime, do they not?
Yes.
And so anyone who is driving by could see that there are cameras covering the parking lot, correct?
If they look, I guess, yes.
Okay. Now, beyond your establishment, the very next door neighbor is the Sam's Club, right?
Yes.
And there's a gas station right there, is there not?
Yes, there's a gas station.
And then after this gas station, there's another gas station after that, is there not?
Yes.
Okay. And so if someone runs out of gas, they can easily go get gas next door.
Yes.
Okay. They don't need a car to go there, is what I'm saying.
No, it's very close. It's at walking distance.
Okay. And when you went up to the car on the 28th, you smelled trash, did you not?
Pretty much, yeah. There's food and everything, so yes.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you, Ms. Sanchez.
Okay.
Any redirect?
Just one question. When you're talking about smelling trash and referring to there's food and everything, are you talking about in that dumpster?
In the dumpster, yes.
That's all I wanted to clarify. Your Honor.
May the witness be excused?
Yes, sir.
You may.
You smelled no distinct difference from the trash when you were there near the car. You didn't smell anything other than trash, right?
Just the regular smell that will come out of the dumpster.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
May the witness be excused?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. You may be excused. State may call the next witness.
Simon Birch.
Simon A. Birch, SIMON BIRCH.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Where do you live, sir? Where do you live?
Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay. Did you ever live in Orlando?
I did.
When was that?
I left here in 2009, 2006 through 2009.
When you were here in Orlando, how were you employed?
I was the operations manager for Johnson's Record Service on Narcoossee Road.
What were your responsibilities or duties as the manager at Johnson's Record on Narcoossee?
I was responsible for the day-to-day operation of the location to ensure the employees perform their duties as required and to ensure the facility was kept in the condition and responsibilities that were required by the company.
Okay. The facility there on Narcoossee Road, is it secured?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you describe the security measures that Johnson's Record has taken?
Sure. The entire property was fenced by a 7-foot chain link fence with barbed wire around the top of it. And then inside that facility was an additional fenced-in compound, which was locked and gated at both ends again, by a chain link fence with barbed wire. And inside that facility was secured indoor storage if it was needed. It was kind of one inside the other, inside the other.
Okay. Did you also live on the property for a
Yes.
period of time?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
When was that?
The entire period of time I was there, there was a mobile home there, and as part of my job, I lived there on site 24 hours a day.
Do you recall whether or not Johnson's Wrecker received a Pontiac Sunbird back on June 30th of 2008, Sunfire, a 1998 Pontiac Sunfire on June 30th of 2008 from an Amscot
Yes, ma'am.
located at 7501 East Colonial Drive?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, may I approach with a stipulation?
You may.
Your Honor, at this point, may we announce the stipulation?
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the stipulation reads as follows between the state of Florida and the defendant, Caylee Marie Anthony. On June 30th, 2008, Johnson's Wrecker Service towed a 1998 Pontiac Sunfire from Amscot located at 7501 East Colonial Drive. The copies of the records of the Johnson's Wrecker Service regarding this transaction are a true and accurate representation of the business records of Johnson's Wrecker Service. The parties have agreed to this fact, and it should be considered as true in your deliberations. You may proceed.
Thank you. If I may approach the witness, Your Honor.
May.
Sir, I'm going to show you what's been marked as states JK for identification. Have you take a look at the documents inside the envelope and tell me if you recognize them.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you recognize those to be?
These are the tow sheets, the impound sheets, the private property removal certificate, the tag talk that was done to produce who was the registered owner of the vehicle.
The court reporter needs to know what you've titled that document.
That is the tag talk document, tag talk, TAGTALK. It's the records that come back from Orange County that notifies us who the registered owner of the vehicle is. And this is the Orange County Sheriff's Office vehicle impound sheet that we have to send to Orange County, notifying them that we have the vehicle. And then the last page is a copy of the certificate of the title and what I believe is Mr. Anthony's identification that they'd have had to produce to reclaim the vehicle.
Those documents are accurate business records of Johnson's record.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, in light of the testimony and the stipulation, I would seek to introduce JK for identification into evidence.
Any objections?
No, sir.
It will be received in evidence as states numbered.
Mr. Birch, when you receive a car, or this car in particular, what action is taken by Johnson's Wrecker? What do you do with the vehicle?
Initially, the vehicle is stored. When the driver brings the vehicle in, he fills out the necessary paperwork, which is then given to the data entry clerk, who's working in the office at the time.
You're talking about when the tow truck driver brings the vehicle in?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The driver has a set procedure to go through, writing out on his invoice and his impound sheets the vehicle identification number, the license plate number, the location of the collection. And then he turns that paperwork in on arrival back to the facility after the vehicle's been unloaded. And the data entry clerk, whoever that might be at the time, would then run the tag talk, notifying us of who the vehicle is. The vehicle's entered into the computer system, and the paperwork is filed accordingly in the daily files. That's all that's done on the first day that the vehicle comes in.
Is there a specific location on the property where vehicles are stored?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is there a distinction made for private tows or tows that are generated by a law enforcement agency or some other reason for a tow?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us how that works.
The vehicles are segregated in that particular yard, depending on what department had the vehicle towed and why the vehicle was towed. Due to the volume of vehicles that we had through the yard, it made documenting, processing, and maintaining those vehicles a lot easier if they were marked accordingly and stored accordingly in their own individual locations.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as LG for identification. Can you see a photograph in front of you?
Yes, ma'am.
What is it that we're looking at?
That's an overhead view of the storage facility at 7777 Narcoossee Road.
All right. Now, since 2008, there has been some work done to Narcoossee Road.
Yes, ma'am. It's been widened.
Did that require some changes to the actual record yard?
Minor changes to the front of the yard, yes, ma'am. The fence line was brought back, by recollection, probably about 100 feet from the road line, from where it used to be. It follows the same contour, it's just probably about 100 to 125 feet closer to the property than it was before.
Okay. Other than the changes that were necessitated as a result of the widening of Narcoossee Road, is this photograph a fair and accurate representation of the layout of the yard of Johnson's Record back in June and July of 2008?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this point, I would seek to introduce LG for identification into evidence.
What says the defense?
No objections, Your Honor.
To be received in evidence is states numbered.
Permission to publish this item.
Published.
All right, Mr. Birch, first of all, over here, the area that I've indicated with red, what is that?
That's Narcoossee Road.
Okay. The area that I've circled, tried to circle, in red, what is that?
That's the mobile home trailer that's located. The physical address is 7781 Narcoossee Road for that.
Now, you've mentioned that this entire compound is fenced.
That is correct.
Can you show us where that is on the diagram? And you can use that as well and use your finger to indicate the fenced area.
The front fence line starts here, runs down all the way beyond the end of this picture, and then would run like this all the way up here, here. And that would be the external perimeter.
All right. How does the general public gain access to the tow yard?
There's a gate entranceway off of Narcoossee Road, and during regular business hours, the double gate would be unlocked. The gate entry into the yard was always kept closed, even during business hours, and there was parking provided in front of the office for the members of the general public to park their vehicle, and then they'd approach the window of the office, which was bulletproof glass with a speakeasy window in the middle of it.
Do you have bulletproof glass there for a reason?
That actual window, when this office was remodeled, that window came from our other facility, which had bulletproof glass all around for reasons, I guess, in the past. And when we remodeled this facility, we just installed it as a means of protection, should we need it. And that way we didn't have to have any physical contact with the customers when they first approached the building. It was just something that the company felt was a better form of security for the employees.
People generally aren't happy when they come to the tow yard to pick up their vehicle?
No, man, people are never happy when they come to a tow yard to pick up their vehicle.
Okay. So when someone would arrive there, how would they access a car that's been towed?
Well, the procedure would be, say, as we had the yard secured, once they approached, the office was always manned when there was someone, when the facility was open. And so as the vehicle would approach, you could see it from anywhere in the office, and therefore the dispatcher or the clerk on duty would approach the glass from our side, and then the member of the general public would walk down the steps and approach the window. There was a sign above the window that said, "This is the window you come to," and it was fairly obvious where you needed to go. And then they'd come up to the window and explain what they were there for.
Okay. You said that Johnson's tower had received a 98 Pontiac Sunfire on June 30th of 2008. Did you have contact with it on that day?
No, ma'am.
Do you recall where it was stored during the time it was at Johnson's wrecker?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that location shown on this diagram?
Yes, it is.
Let me see if I can switch the color for you. I'm trying to get a different, all right. Try that, and if you could, with the mark, indicate where the vehicle was stored.
Okay. It was stored right on the end here, a little bit close right there, where that shrub is now. At the time, that shrub was kept trimmed when I was there, but the vehicle was parked right there on the corner.
All right. Did it stay there the entire time it was there?
Yes, ma'am.
How long was the vehicle on the property at Johnson's wrecker?
I don't recall the exact length of time. If I remember rightly, it was around about 2 weeks.
When a vehicle is on property for that long, do you have some rules or regulations that you have to follow as it relates to the disposal of that vehicle?
Yes, ma'am, we do.
What would those be?
Depending on why the vehicle was towed and the year of the vehicle, depended on how we dealt with it and how we processed it. The state of Florida gives towing and recovery companies the opportunity to reclaim the vehicle if it's not picked up, to recoup some of the losses involved with towing and storage. One of my jobs as the operations manager was to determine, should the vehicle reach its time limit and the vehicle would be disposed of, whether or not that would be a vehicle that we would title and resell on, or it would be a vehicle that we would dispose of by crushing it and scrapping it out. So at some point, I would make the determination during the time the vehicle was on property to start the mental process of what we were going to do with it should it stay the duration of its time frame.
Okay. How long is that before you all take action either to retitle the vehicle in your name or the company's name, or to dispose of it in some other fashion?
Depending on the year of the vehicle, ma'am, there was a cutoff point, and I don't remember exactly what the year was, but it was either 35 days or 50 days.
Is there some obligation to make an attempt to notify the registered owner of the vehicle's location?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us about that. How is that achieved?
On the third business day, the notification was handled by our main office. When we processed the paperwork, it was entered into our computer system. And on the third business day that the vehicle was with us, a letter would be generated to the last registered owner of the vehicle, which was the name that appeared on the tag talk. And that letter would be generated and sent via certified mail to that registered owner of the vehicle, notifying them that we have the vehicle, and as of that date, what the charges would be to pick up the vehicle and where the vehicle was located.
As it relates to this 98 Pontiac Sunfire, since you indicated it was on property for approximately 2 weeks, did you take any steps to evaluate how that vehicle should be disposed of?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you do?
Normally on the third day of a vehicle being on property, third or fourth day, I would start paying a little more attention to it. We had quite a high turnover of vehicles in and vehicles out, so it didn't behoove me to pay a lot of attention to a vehicle unless it sat for a few days.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't be specific, but round about the fourth or fifth day that we'd had the vehicle, I went up to it and gave it a cursory external inspection to determine what condition it was in, as to whether or not, should the vehicle last, the duration, it would be worth our while titling the vehicle and going through the expense of getting keys and whatever else would be necessary to make the vehicle sellable. I would have looked at the external condition of the vehicle, around the vehicle, underneath the vehicle, through the windows of the vehicle, look at the interior. I was not permitted to enter the vehicle, and the vehicle remained locked because it wasn't our vehicle, and therefore at that time it wasn't. We were not allowed to gain entry to the vehicle.
Okay.
So my inspection was limited to a visual external and through the glass of the vehicle.
I take from your testimony that you didn't have the keys to
No,
the
ma'am.
vehicle. Okay. Did you make an independent determination that the doors of the car were locked
Yes, ma'am.
just by pulling the handle?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall at the time you made this cursory evaluation of the vehicle after it had been there for 3 or 4 days, whether or not you noticed any odor emanating or coming from the vehicle in any way?
As I was looking around the vehicle, there was nothing really noticeable at all until I put my hand up against the glass to shield the sun and look through the windows. And at that point, I did notice a fairly strong odor emanating from the vehicle, yes.
Okay. Now, how long total have you been in the towing business?
With exception of a 2-year hiatus in the mid-'90s, it's been almost 30 years.
And during that 2-year hiatus, what job did you have?
I was the operations supervisor for waste management in Madison.
What is waste management?
They're a refuse and recycling company.
Garbage?
Yes, ma'am.
Would it be fair to say that you've been exposed to a wide variety of odors?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Have you ever had the opportunity in your 30 years as in the towing business to come across a vehicle in which there had been a dead body?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us about that experience.
I couldn't be specific as to how many. 6, 7, 8 times maybe in my career have I had the misfortune to either tow or process or be involved with a vehicle that's had some kind of long-term fatality in it, as opposed to traffic fatalities, which I've been to, unfortunately, hundreds and hundreds. But a long-term, yes, it's been several occasions.
All right. In 2008, was there a vehicle on another part of this property that was stored after an individual had committed suicide in it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that those remains had not been found for several days?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. You had the opportunity to smell that odor of that separate vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
You had talked about being in the waste management business. Having experience in that, did you become familiar with the varying odors of all manner of garbage?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How about items that people would leave in their car that after they were arrested, where the car had to be towed or they broke down?
Sure.
Tell us about the range of experiences that you've had with items left in cars.
Towing for many law enforcement agencies over the years. I've towed or been around numerous vehicles that have been towed for DUIs or from breakdowns that people occur on their way back from shopping, from the restaurants with food left in the car. Been exposed to multiple different scenarios of pretty much anything you can imagine being left in a vehicle. Most people don't expect their vehicles to be towed, and therefore day-to-day life goes on. People get injured in accidents on the way back from the grocery store, and they wait a week to come and pick up their groceries that were in the car that they left in the aftermath of the accident. So there have been many different scenarios.
Having had that varied experience, can you distinguish between the scent of trash or garbage and the scent of decomposing human remains?
Overruled.
In my opinion, and my experience, the smell of decomposition is unique in comparison to the smell of rotten food or rotten garbage or anything else. It's a very, very unique, distinctive smell.
When you smell that, do you, in your opinion, know the difference?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You said that when you did your cursory inspection and put your hands up to the glass to shield the sun, you noticed an odor
Yes, ma'am.
at that point. Were you able at that juncture to make any connection as to whether or not that was garbage or something else?
It was an odor consistent to what I'd smelled in the past when it comes to decomposition. The car is fairly well sealed, so without being able to enter the vehicle, the strength of it was a little minimal, but it was still there. The instant flash in my mind was, whew, I know what that smells like. But looking in the vehicle, noticed nothing to trigger anything. And at this point, it's just a car in the yard.
Okay. So after that cursory inspection of it, what action, if any, do you take with the vehicle while it sits there?
At that point, I didn't do anything else with the vehicle. I'd made my inspection. I determined what we were going to do with the vehicle. Should it go through the due process and that we gain possession of it. I'd made my determination what we'd do with that vehicle. And at that point, I treated it as every other vehicle in the yard. It had been correctly stored, it had been correctly marked, the paperwork had been correctly processed. And at that point, it was just, we just would leave it to fulfill its course.
All right. Did there come an occasion where someone came to pick up the vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you yourself recall when that was?
I believe it was July 15th, if I'm correct.
Okay. Would you like to review the records of Johnson's record? Just
Yes, please.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Yes, ma'am, July the 15th. Yes, ma'am, 2008.
Do you recall who came to pick up the vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
Who was that?
It was Mr. and Mrs. Anthony.
Did you have contact with both of them?
Yes, ma'am.
Where did that occur?
Through the glass, through the bulletproof glass initially.
And what do you recall of that initial contact with them?
The time that they arrived, I was in my office, which is off of the dispatch clerk office. And I was doing some paperwork in there, and I heard my clerk at the time engaging in conversation with persons or people at the window who were becoming very agitated. And one of my duties there was to ensure, obviously, that the safety of my employees primarily, but also that when confrontation occurred, that I would try and keep that confrontation to a minimum. So I came out of my office, and my clerk turned to me and kind of gave me the look and said, "Hey, can you help me out here a little bit? I've got some customers that are a little bit unruly." So I approached the bulletproof glass and spoke to Mrs. Anthony, and she was very agitated, very upset, as is quite common. Wanted to know why it was so expensive to get her car picked up. Why hadn't we notified her right away when we had her car? Genuinely being, I wouldn't say belligerent, but definitely agitated about the situation, which was pretty normal for.
Were you able to answer those questions?
Yes, ma'am. We looked at the calendar. As I said, we were required to send out a certified letter. And we looked at the date that the vehicle came in the calendar and realized that the date that the mail would have gone out, combined with the days of the week, that there was a pretty good chance that that letter went out and would have been stuck in the mail during the 4th of July holiday and then the upcoming weekends. And I believe they'd said they were out of town for a couple of days, and then it wasn't until they got back that they had to go and sign for the letter and so on and so forth. So at that point, it was determined that we'd followed due process, and it was just a roll of the dice, I guess, with the dates and the holidays that it took that long for the letter to get to them from our perspective.
Once you answered whatever questions or concerns that they had, did you proceed to go to the vehicle with either one of them?
Yes, ma'am.
May I have a moment? Judge, would you like me to press on?
No.
Okay. I saw that look in your eye, so.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the jury, the time is now 12 noon. It's time for your lunch. Your lunch should be here. We're going to recess for lunch. Please remember my previous admonitions. Do not discuss this case among yourselves, nor with anyone else. We will be in recess to 1:30. Any additional instructions on behalf of the state or the defense? Okay, we're in recess. Does the state recognize the presence Does the state recognize the presence of the jury? Yes, Your Honor. And does the defense? Okay, members of the jury, did you heed all of my previous admonitions during the lunch hour? Okay, you may continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Birch, I think where we left off was me asking whether or not you proceeded to the vehicle with either Mr. or Mrs. Anthony.
Yes, ma'am.
Before we get to that, when your business sends paperwork to the registered owner, does that paperwork include some instruction on what they need to bring with them?
I believe it does, ma'am, but I wasn't responsible for that.
Okay.
But I believe, yes, it does.
Do you require, do you know that some people or all people bring proof of ownership
Yes, ma'am.
of the vehicle
Yes, ma'am.
and their driver's license or other form of identification?
That's correct.
Okay. Is payment to be made in cash only?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have knowledge as to whether or not the letter instructs how much per day the fees will accrue if the vehicle is to remain for an extended period of time?
I believe it notes the daily storage fee, yes.
Okay. Do you recall what the daily storage fee was at Johnson's Wrecker in June and July of 2008?
Either $20 or $25 a day, I believe.
Now, which of the Anthonys did you go to the vehicle with?
Mr. George Anthony.
Okay. The map, or the aerial, which is, well, it's LG, but it's been introduced into evidence as 33, is still on the display. If I could have that cropped to... Would that cropping of the picture show the area where you would have to travel from to get to the vehicle?
I don't have a picture, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my fault. Help.
Yes.
All right. If you could tell us sort of the pathway that you would have had to take to the vehicle. It is. It's.
You want the jury to see it?
I.
Just a second. All right. Members of the jury, can you see it? You can't? It's there now, isn't it? Is it there now? Yes. Okay. Technology.
That's why I have an assistant. Okay. You said that the area where you had to walk from to get to the vehicle is displayed in the cropped portion of the photograph, correct?
To walk to it, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you just sort of give us a pathway where you went?
Sure.
With you said Mr. Anthony, correct?
Yes, ma'am. The back entrance to the office comes out here, and then you walk alongside the office to the main gate, which is locked or closed here, where you open it enough to let someone walk through, and then you escort them back down through here, through a side gate right here, which is also closed, and then walk across the front of the enclosed buildings here to the vehicle here.
All right. Just takes a few seconds to walk over there?
Yeah, 15 seconds, 20 seconds.
Okay. Plus however much time it takes to
Open
unlock
the gates.
the...
Yeah, the
unlock-
gates are not locked during the day, they're just merely closed,
Okay.
but the gates are visible from all four corners of the office, to be honest.
Did you walk in silence with Mr. Anthony back to this vehicle?
No, ma'am.
All right. What do you recall occurring?
When I opened the gate, I asked who was coming back, and Mr. Anthony said he would. And the first thing he did was apologize for his wife's outbursts. He said they were under a lot of stress, and he apologized profusely. He was very calm, very humble. And I said, you know, that's fine. We're used to it, and we see it day in, day out. So I didn't give it a second thought. And he made some comment to the fact that his granddaughter hadn't been seen for a long time. She was missing, and his daughter wouldn't tell him where she was. And he was just, in my opinion at the time, venting. And I said, I'm sorry, and I didn't engage in conversation. I didn't pry. I just let him vent and say, almost everybody that comes to that yard is not having a good day, and I'm not going to make it worse by aggravating them, so you just let them vent. And he mentioned it, he said something to the effect of, we'll probably get divorced over this, and again, I didn't respond, but he was definitely apologetic, and you could see he was troubled, but nothing that I really...
You just listened?
Yeah.
Okay. So once you got over to the vehicle, what were your observations?
Well, I asked Mr. Anthony if he had the keys, and he said, yes, I have them here. And my full intention was he'd get in the vehicle and start it up and drive it out of the yard. I would imagine as I walked across the yard, I would have indicated how to drive out of the yard, because driving out is a different path from when we walk out. And that was policy, that we'd instruct the customer as we were walking. We'd point them in the direction of where to drive. So that would have come into the conversation, just because that's what we did every time.
Now-
I expected him to get in the car and drive it away.
Okay. Aside from the keys, did you observe whether or not Mr. Anthony had any other items with him?
No, ma'am.
So once you get over to the car, what happens?
Mr. Anthony opened the car and got in the car and attempted to start it, and the car wouldn't start.
Okay.
As he opened the door,
All right, I was going to say, did you have any observations, whether that be sight, sound, or smell, as the door was opened?
sure, as the door was open, the smell came out very intently. It was almost like you were releasing it into the atmosphere, and it was very potent. It was eye-opening once the car door was opened.
Do you believe that you were able to identify what kind of smell that was?
In the back of my mind, I said to myself, that's the smell of decomposition that I've been exposed to in the past. I didn't say anything to Mr. Anthony about it, other than kind of that's a little ripe, or that's a bit offensive or whatever. But I didn't mention anything to him about it being what I perceived initially to be decomposition.
Why did that pop into your mind? You said it just popped into your mind as soon as you got the strongest force of the odor.
Because I've smelt it before on numerous occasions, including fairly recently. It's not a smell that you forget. It's not something that I've not smelled anything similar to that, other than what it is.
All right. When you're talking about decomposition, are you talking about a deceased human being?
Yes, ma'am.
You said that you didn't say anything about that out loud.
No, ma'am.
Why not?
I don't really know. I guess it's not something you'd throw out there. I guess, the gentleman was talking about his granddaughter missing and his daughter missing, and it was obviously a fairly agitated situation, and then the last thing I needed to do was stir it up. I just didn't feel it necessary for me to give him my opinion.
Okay. So you had indicated Mr. Anthony got into the car.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Where did you stick around?
Yeah, I stood right by the vehicle with the driver's door open, and he attempted to start the vehicle.
Okay. What happened at that point?
It turned over, it cranked very healthily, had a very strong battery in it, and it just refused to fire.
Okay. Did you notice at any point whether or not Mr. Anthony had a gas can with him?
Not at that particular time, no.
Okay.
Not at that moment.
How would you have been in a position to note if he had one at all?
I peered into the car while he was trying to start it, and the gas gauge was on E. And so I said to him, it appears that the car might be out of gas. It was giving it the symptoms that with a healthy, turning over healthily, that it quite possibly could be out of gasoline.
Okay. All right. Perhaps I misunderstood your answer earlier. You said he got into the car, turned the ignition. Okay, but the engine didn't go?
No, it cranked over, it turned over. That's
Okay.
the phrase of the engine turning over, but it wouldn't it wouldn't fire. It was obviously not getting either fuel or ignition for some reason, and then the engine wouldn't start. Although the battery was healthy enough for it to turn over fairly respectfully. I didn't believe it was a battery issue.
All right. So once that occurred, what did you say or do?
Mr. Anthony, I believe at that point, said to me, well, I have some gasoline with me. Shall I go and get it? And I said, yes, that'd be fine. So I escorted him back the same path that we came to the vehicle he came in, and he returned with a can of gasoline.
All right. Can you describe that can for us, if you remember?
It was one of the older kinds. I normally wouldn't notice something like a can of gasoline, but it was one of the old metal ones, the round ones. You don't see them very often. It's
Right.
seen better days. It was, you know, not one of the conventional plastic ones that you're used to seeing and have been for the last, I don't know how many years. And especially in my trade, you see them a lot, but the metal ones you don't see very often.
All right. Did you notice whether or not it was battered?
It seemed
Rick. Cunol, the brand I trust.
To that point, had anyone opened up anything besides the driver's door?
no, ma'am, not at that point.
Did you wait for Mr. Anthony to obtain this gas can from wherever?
From his vehicle, yes, ma'am. I waited at the gate for him
Okay.
and then escorted him back to the vehicle as we'd previously done.
Did you assist him in any way in putting gas into the car?
I don't recall. I doubt it because it normally wasn't something we'd have done. I would have escorted him back to the car and he'd have put the gasoline in the car, but I can't recall specifically.
All right. Did he get back into the car and attempt to start it again?
I don't recall if at that point he got into the car or at that point we decided to open the trunk of the vehicle to see if the odor was emanating from the trunk of something that might have been left in the trunk. I don't recall which
The order.
the order was at that point.
Could you see anything in the passenger compartment of the vehicle that would have suggested to you some source of the odor that you described?
Nothing.
So at some point, regardless of the order, did you suggest that the trunk be opened?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Mr. Anthony have a key to the trunk?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was it opened?
We opened the trunk, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I don't recall if I opened it or he opened it, but we were both at the back of the vehicle when we opened the trunk.
Okay.
My thought process was that if there's something in here that's making this car smell bad, we can take it out and I'll dispose of it for you in my dumpster rather than you having to, and again, I was just trying to appease the gentleman at the time.
Okay. So when the trunk was opened, were you standing directly behind the car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Same as Mr. Anthony?
Yes, ma'am. We were side by side.
What were your observations once the trunk was opened?
The odor that came out of the trunk was even more strong than the odor that came out of the vehicle when we opened it. There were a few flies that flew out, and we both looked in the trunk at the same time. I noticed I believe it was a white standard kitchen garbage bag in the trunk of the vehicle.
Okay. Just one or more than one?
Just one, I believe, if I remember rightly.
Okay. Do you have any recollection of items other than a white garbage bag being
No,
in the
ma'am.
trunk?
No, ma'am. Nothing that stood out.
Did either one of you touch that garbage bag?
Yes, ma'am. I don't recall if I suggested or if Mr. Anthony suggested, but we thought it'd be a good idea to look in the garbage bag quick and see if that was maybe an indication of the odor. And at that point, the two of us standing side by side, one or either of us opened the top of the bag up and peered inside.
All right. Do you have any recollection as to whether or not it was one of those flat top garbage bags, or did it have a drawstring pull of some
I
sort?
believe it was a drawstring.
Okay. Was the string drawn and tied to your recollection?
That I don't recall.
Do you recall who actually opened it?
Not specifically, no. We were both involved in it together, and I couldn't tell you if I pulled it open or if he pulled it open. again, at the time, I was just trying to appease and not really paying.
Okay. Do you have any recollection as to what you saw inside that garbage bag?
I remember seeing what I thought was a pizza box and some papers, nothing to indicate to me that there was any foodstuffs of any kind of amount in there. The bag was very, very light. It didn't weigh, it didn't feel heavy. It didn't feel like there was maybe half a chicken in there or anything like that, or it was quite light, and it appeared that it was just mainly maybe regular household refuse in there that maybe you would take out of a kitchen.
Okay. Did either you or Mr. Anthony put your hands in the bag and sift through every item at that point?
Not really, no. No, it was just a general observation that it appeared that there was nothing at first glance in there that would have created the smell. And I offered just to dispose of it for him.
Right. Did you make a statement of any sort to Mr. Anthony about whether or not the bag was the source of the smell, in your opinion?
No, ma'am.
Did he make any statement to you that you recall about whether or not the bag or any item in the bag was the source of the smell?
No, ma'am.
So what happened to the bag?
I took the bag out of the trunk and I walked across to the short distance to the fence line, if you wish me to.
Okay, let me.
To that fence line right there. And using my left arm, I threw the bag over the fence. And I'm right-handed, and I threw it with my left hand, and it's a 6-foot fence with chain link on top of it. And it was no effort, and it landed on the other side like you'd expect a bag of paper to land on the other side.
All right. You up and over and landed.
Yep. With the intention of when Mr. Anthony drove out in the vehicle, I'd go around and retrieve the bag and place it in our dumpster, and my job would be done, and he'd be either taking care of his problem for him.
Okay. Did he get back into the car?
Yes, ma'am.
At that point?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was that the end of the conversation between the two of you?
Pretty much. Again, he thanked me, and the car started, and he drove it out of the yard in the direction that I told him to drive, and I walked back out the way that we'd come in, and the gate was still closed at this point as per protocol, and I waited for him to drive up the driveway, and I met him at the gate and opened the gate, and again he said, again, I'm sorry, I apologize for the aggravation when we came up here, and I appreciate your help. And he pulled out of the fenced-in area so I could close the gate, and I walked back into the office. And when I went back around into the office, I could see him and Mrs. Anthony conversing outside, and then she got into one car and he stayed in that car and they drove away.
All right. Did you go back to the bag at some point?
At that point, yes, I went back and I recall that I had to go and pick the bag up. I'd temporarily forgotten about it, and I went and picked the bag up and went and put it in the dumpster. And
Can you circle on the photograph where the dumpster is on the property of Johnson's Wrecker?
right there.
Was that the last you saw of the bag?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr.
You may proceed.
Ms. Drain, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Birch.
Good afternoon, sir.
Now, by law, you're required to send out a notice of, I guess, on the 4th day of the car being at your tow yard. Is that not correct?
Yes, sir.
And you testified that the Anthonys had informed you that, well, I guess you had assumed because of the 4th of July holiday, it would have been in the mail that weekend.
That was the assumption we came to, looking at the calendar and the weekends and the holiday, because I'm not aware of when those letters are generated and when they're sent out, that at the time when we were discussing it, it was a way I guess, justify when they got the mail. And it seemed to be a conclusion between us that that was the reason why.
And then they told you they had been out of town for a couple of days?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Now, you also testified that as you were walking to the car, Mr. Anthony informed you his granddaughter was missing.
Words to that effect, yes, sir.
And the car, once you immediately got there, you noticed right away that it was human decomposition.
When the vehicle door was opened, the smell that I was already aware of through, observing the vehicle days earlier became more intense when we opened the vehicle. And that is a smell that is, to me, reminded me of human decomposition, yes, sir.
And Mr. Anthony then got in the car and tried to start the car.
Yes, sir.
And I know you testified earlier that he had first gotten gas. Is that correct?
No, sir. No.
Okay.
He got the gas. We went back to get the gasoline after the car wouldn't start.
Okay.
He
after
attempted he attempted to start the car first.
Did you open the trunk before he put the gas in or after?
Like I said, I don't recall the order that went in. It was all at the same, similar time, so I don't recall that order precisely.
Okay, I wanted to be clear about that because I thought I heard you testify that first you put in the gas, then
No,
you
sir.
open the trunk.
No, so we tried to start the car first. It cranked and cranked and cranked, indicating it might have been out of gas, and then we went back and got the gasoline.
Now, if I showed you your deposition, would that refresh your recollection as to whether you actually opened the trunk first before he put gas?
Sure.
Okay. I'm referring to page 35, lines 14 through 20. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm sorry, what lines again? 14.
Thank you.
Does that refresh your recollection, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So, in fact, what happened first was he gets in, you then open the trunk, you discuss it, he throws out the garbage, and then he tries to start the car. Is that correct?
That's what's in that deposition. So yes, sir, that's what would have happened. It
Now,
was a lot
we
closer
took-
to the time.
Your deposition was taken in October of 2008, was it not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that was much closer in time
Yes, sir.
than, of course, 2011.
Yes, sir.
And that would account for your not being able to remember, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you testified about having experience with smelling human decomposition, right?
Just through my experience in the industry, yes, sir.
And especially, and you have actually unique experience where you've actually worked in sanitation.
Yes, sir.
So you are pretty much the perfect person you have the perfect experience to be able to tell the difference between garbage and human decomposition.
I wouldn't say I was the perfect person, but I've been exposed to both things on numerous occasions.
But you're certainly qualified to be able to discuss about both topics.
I feel my experience is enough to tell me I know the difference between the two. And I've towed hundreds of garbage trucks in my years too.
Now, when Mr. Anthony showed up and the car wouldn't start, he immediately had the gas cans there at the tow yard. He didn't have to leave, did he?
No, he had the gas cans with him in his other vehicle that he came in, yes, sir.
And it's an old round cylinder gas can.
Yes, sir.
And that's not very common, is it? That people show up with gas cans to the tow yard?
Not really, no, sir. No, we kept a stash of plastic gas cans for people that came that didn't have gas that we'd lend them so they could go and get their own gas. It wasn't common, though.
And within this time, how long would you say you were there with Mr. Anthony with the trunk open before he went and got the gas?
Maybe 5,
5 minutes?
maybe. I
So
don't
you-
recall exactly.
And then when he went to get the gas cans, did you stay at the car?
No, sir, I escorted him back to the gate. We never let anybody on their own in the yard. We escorted them there and back.
And then you came back with him,
Yes, sir.
and then he poured the gas and you were there?
Yes, sir.
And how long would you say in total that you were with him?
Between 5 and 10 minutes. It wouldn't have been long. It's a fairly straightforward process.
Now, as we discussed, you have experience with smelling trash,
Yes, sir.
and you have experience smelling bodies in cars,
Yes, sir.
and you, of course, would never obstruct justice.
No, sir.
And you, of course, would never allow someone to drive a car away if you knew it had evidence of a homicide, would you, sir?
No, sir.
And in fact, you work for Johnson's Tow Yard is the police tow yard for Orange County, is it not?
Yes, sir.
And in many times, you have evidence that you guys tow there.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, this car was evidence in this case, and your company was the one that towed it from the Anthony home.
Yes, sir. After it was recovered from my yard. Yes, sir.
And between the time that this man tells you he's got a missing granddaughter, and you're there for 15 minutes with the car, you never called the police.
No, sir.
In fact, you never called the police after he left.
No, sir.
And the way you found out about this was after it was towed back to you from the police.
It wasn't towed back to us, sir.
The car was picked up by your company.
It was picked up by my company, but it was not towed back to my facility.
I understand. I misspoke. It wasn't until you noticed that this car was a piece of evidence until one of your employees had informed you that this was the same car that you guys had.
Even at that point, I didn't contact the police because at that point it was an investigation that, in my opinion, didn't pertain to me at all. I had no idea why it was towed to forensics.
Okay.
My driver called me and said, "Hey, that car we released, we're towing it to forensics." And I said, "Okay, thank you."
Now, you also lived here in Orlando during that time, obviously.
Yes, sir.
And you were exposed to all of the media coverage in this case, were you not, sir, during that time?
As everybody living in the city was, yes, sir.
In fact, you couldn't avoid it, could you?
Very difficult.
Okay. And when the car was immediately towed and taken to the forensics bay, that was actually on the news as well, was it not, sir?
I'm not aware of that, sir.
So you didn't witness the car being processed by crime scene evidence as it was broadcasted across
No,
the
sir.
world? No, sir?
Can you just ask that question again?
Sure, I'm sorry. You didn't witness that the car was being processed by crime scene people as it was broadcasted across numerous times?
The following day, and from then on, there was obviously pictures on the news of it in the bay. I saw what everybody else saw on the times that it was on television.
Right, so
Yeah.
you saw it immediately after, not that day, but
Yeah, whenever it was first broadcast, I'm sure, or it was, like you say, it was very hard to ignore it. It was on every news channel.
however, police didn't come and actually take a statement from you until July 24th. Is that not correct, sir?
I couldn't tell you the date specifically, and if you have it written down, then I'm sure that's...
If I show it to you, will that refresh your
Sure.
recollection? May I approach the witness, Judge?
You may.
Thank you.
Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, and your statement was given on July 24th, 2008,
Okay. Yes, sir.
9 days after you had this experience,
Yes, sir.
and 8 days of media coverage about the car. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And the entire country knowing about a missing child.
Sustained.
You knew there was a missing child on July 24th, 2008,
Yes, sir.
and you knew that it was being broadcasted that there was a foul odor in the trunk of the car,
Yes, sir.
and that it was a significant issue in this case.
Yes, sir.
And the major source for your business was the Orange County Sheriff's Office at the time, was it not?
It was a substantial portion of it, yes, sir.
In fact, it's a contract that you had with Orange County Sheriff's Department, was it not?
Yes, sir.
Now, I'd like to go back to your interaction with Mr. Anthony. Your form letter, I guess it's a form letter that you send out every four days?
Yes, sir.
You don't actually, you just insert the names? Is that how it works?
Yes, sir.
You don't exactly put down how long, in fact, you would never put down how long a car was at a specific property, would you?
We would have no idea, sir.
Exactly. You'd have
We
no
would
idea.
not know.
And Mr. Anthony actually informed you that it was there for 3 days, did he not?
He did, sir. He mentioned the fact that it had been at the Amscot for 3 days. It was something he mentioned in conversation. I didn't divulge or react. It was just something that came up in conversation.
And so he knew the car was at Amscot for 3 days, according to you.
As far as I'm aware, yes, sir. Yeah.
And when the Anthonys came to your establishment, they were complaining as to why they hadn't been notified.
Yes, sir.
And they were complaining about the money.
Yes, sir.
And they were complaining why they hadn't been notified before.
Again, they were complaining about why they hadn't been notified. Yes.
If I can just check for a moment, see if I have further questions. Mr. Birch, thank you, sir.
Yes.
Redirect.
Mr. Birch, do you know whether or not the form letter includes some indication about the address from which a car was towed?
I believe it did, yes.
It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Okay, you may continue.
Even though your statement, your formal statement to the Orange County Sheriff's Office may have been on July 24th of 2008, you did call them before that time, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
What prompted you to call them?
I called them the following morning, probably around about 6:37, when I was getting ready for work, and the Anthonys were on television being interviewed about their granddaughter being missing and the car being picked up and the proceedings of the previous day. And I called them then.
Okay. To notify them about the garbage bag that you thought at one point it might have still been on the property.
At that point, ma'am,
Sustain, rephrase the question. Leading,
Okay. Did you think that the garbage bag was still on the property of Johnson's wrecker when you saw the Anthonys on television?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you attempt to find out if it was still on Johnson's wrecker property?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you do?
I went outside of my of the house I was living in on property, and I went to the dumpster, and I opened the dumpster up and jumped in, for want of a better word, and looked for it and pulled through the garbage, thinking that it could be, you know, evidence and important, and I didn't find it.
Okay. Is that when you called the police?
Yes, ma'am. I called the police after that, right at that time.
Okay. Did you inform them at that time that there was a bag on the property that you thought might be important evidence?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
You said that after Mr. Anthony left, you eventually went back, got the bag, and put it in the dumpster.
Fairly soon. I mean, I didn't leave it there for more than a couple of minutes.
Okay. Once the bag was separated from the car for several minutes, did the smell follow the bag?
It didn't appear to.
Objection, Judge. Calls for speculation and move to strike.
Overruled.
Thank you. I have another question.
Any recross as to those issues and those issues alone?
Yes, sir. Mr. Brooks, I want to show you what is listed as Defense Exhibit N, just as a calendar.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to show you what's listed as Defense Exhibit N as in Nancy, just as a calendar. Okay? Can you see that from where I'm standing, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Drain Burdick during redirect asked you if your form letter had the address of the location, correct?
And I believe it did, but I'm not the ones that did those form letters.
Okay. So after they would have received the letter, anyone who would receive the letter, it would have the address of the location where the AMSCOT was.
I believe so.
And that person would know where the car is.
Where it is presently?
Yes, where the car was, I should say.
I believe so.
Okay. And you testified that Mr. Anthony had the keys to the car when he showed up, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, as to the garbage that, actually, let me go back to something that you were just asked. Despite having called the police, you didn't actually give your sworn statement until the 24th, correct?
Correct.
And that's when the detective came out to speak with you.
Correct.
And when you discussed with him the garbage, you had actually discussed with him things that you had heard on television, did you not?
In respect to what?
If I showed you your statement, would that refresh your
Sure.
recollection on that?
Yeah.
It's Bait Stamp 801, Counsel. May I approach the witness?
You may.
Line 2321. Now, when you're talking about the garbage with the detective on the 24th, you actually told him about the pizza box that you had heard about on television, did you not?
Either or.
I'm sorry?
Like it says in the statement, I'm aware that it was there. And as I said earlier, did I categorically say I can remember seeing it in there? It's in my memory banks. It was one of those situations where at the time it wasn't really necessary to process that cleanly. So.
But what you're telling the detective as you're describing to him what was in the trunk, in the garbage, you're telling him of something you saw on television.
I told him I thought possibly at the time, and again, the time process had gone on, and remembering whether you see one item in a garbage bag at the time that really wasn't that, to me, wasn't that important.
Right.
I believed, I was having recollections in my mind that it was there. But like I said to the detective at the time, it could be in my mind because I've seen it.
Right, I'm not questioning your memory at the time. What I'm asking you is, as you're having this conversation with him and trying to recall things, you are recollecting what you remember
Yes, sir.
and what you remembered seeing on television.
And trying to separate the two. Yes, sir. Yeah.
And this is basically what you're talking to him about.
Yes, sir.
Comparing it to what you saw on TV and if that helped you remember.
No, sir. What I said to him was, I'm fairly sure I know that there was a pizza box in there, but I can't tell you if I know that because I categorically saw it myself, or if it's because something that's been, that I've picked up having been exposed to it elsewhere. If you ask me to draw a line, I could tell you that 70% of me says, you know what, I'm pretty sure there was one in there. But if you ask me to tell you 100%, I probably couldn't do that.
Right, and I think we're on the same page, but I just want to, it's a bit confusing, and I want to make sure we all understand.
There was a lot of media exposure at the time, and it would be very difficult to, if there was an element of doubt, to be very pinpoint specific about a specific item that at the time would have been insignificant to me.
Because it's kind of hard to separate, if you're looking back, what you see on television and what you actually saw that day?
No, just because it wasn't significant enough for me to pay that much attention to. It's a pizza
At
box.
that time?
At that time. It's a pizza box in a garbage bag.
So as you're remembering it back, you're remembering both things you saw on television and things that you remembered, right?
In some respect, but I don't think quite as clear cut as you're making it out to be.
And what you're explaining to the detective is that about the bag because of something you heard on television, but you can't swear that you saw a pizza box in there.
Not 100%, no, sir.
But you had thought you had seen that on television.
A good portion of my memory says, yeah, you know what, that I do believe that was there. I do remember seeing that there, but it's not something I could tell you categorically 100%.
And certainly what you had seen on television was in your thought process because that's why you mentioned it.
I assumed at that point it was.
Thank you, sir.
No other questions of the witness, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, may the witness be excused. Thank you, sir. You may be excused. Proceed, Mr. Ashton.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
I want to direct your attention to the middle of July of 2008. During that period of time, did you learn that the vehicle that we discussed earlier that you owned but your daughter drove had been towed?
Yes.
Tell us how it is you first learned of that fact.
I had learned of that fact for getting a notice from the United States Postal Service that was placed on our front door.
Do you recall when, did you find the notice or did your wife find the notice?
My wife is the one that located the notice at the front door.
And when did she inform you of finding this notice?
I believe it was Sunday, the 13th of July. We had been outside working.
Now, you said you found it on your front door, or she found you. I won't ask you if you didn't find it. So she indicated where she found it.
Yes, at our front door.
Is the front door of your home the door that you normally use for ingress and egress, coming and going normally?
Absolutely not. We go through our garage.
Now, so it was found, you said, on, you believe, Sunday.
Yes.
Do you recall what the notice said?
On the upper right-hand corner, it said the sender's name was Johnson, and it was addressed to both of us. It was a yellow, just a normal United States Postal Service notice that we had a certified letter at the post office.
This was on Sunday. Could you go to the post office on Sunday and retrieve it?
Oh, no.
And at the time you saw it, did you have any idea of what it was or what the certified letter was?
No, because I had looked at the name. I didn't recognize the name of anyone that I knew. And
All right. Now, so what, did you do anything on Sunday in regards to this, picking up this document?
no, I just mentioned to my wife that I would just go see what it was about on Monday.
All right, so Monday came along. Did you do anything about it on Monday?
No, I could not because I just had started a new position with another company and had some work issues to go take care of, and I decided I would go ahead and do it the next day.
Was this the job that you talked about going to the interview for on the 24th?
Yes, I had gotten a
Got
new
the job?
position.
All right. So you didn't go on Monday. On Tuesday, did you have a chance to go and follow up on this letter?
Right, Tuesday morning I'd awoken, my wife had went to work, I had a couple errands to run, and I decided to go to the post office and
Overruled.
All right. When you went to the post office, were you able to collect the certified letter?
yes,
Pardon me. Approximately what time was it that you were able to collect the letter?
sometime right about noontime.
Right. When you opened the letter, what was it?
Well, on the envelope itself, I saw Johnson's Towing Service, a local address addressed to my wife and I, and opened it up and noticed that noticed that our vehicle had been towed.
Do you remember whether the off the top of your head, where the letter said where the vehicle had been towed from or when?
I do remember something about an address and being towed on the 30th of June, 2008.
All right. But you don't right now remember the address?
No, I don't.
Okay. So you get the letter. What goes through your mind when you get this letter saying that it was towed on the 27th? Or
Well,
30th, I'm sorry.
Being concerned because I took a step back second thinking I was believing that this vehicle was at another location, was in my daughter's possession, and it just caught me a little bit off guard, like, why didn't we hear about it prior to this?
Where did you think the vehicle should have been at the time when it was being towed from whatever that location was?
The last I knew was in my daughter's possession, and she was possibly in Jacksonville, Florida with it.
And was that something that you were told by your wife?
Yes.
All right, so you got the letter, read it. What did you do next?
Immediately I called my wife, and I informed her where the vehicle was at, and I said I was on my way to that location to find out more about it.
And did you then travel to Johnson's?
Yes, I arrived at Johnson's Towing probably within just a few minutes because it's not that far away from the post office, and I inquired at the front reception area about our vehicle.
And what were you told?
That there was a normal procedure when a vehicle's towed, this letter gets sent out. I was a little upset about this charge of over $500. We live within a mile and a half of this location. I just asked a bunch of different questions, and yeah, I was a little bit upset because it didn't make any sense to me why we hadn't gotten a notice even quicker, or just a regular phone call like, we have your car.
Was that because it had been, I guess, a little over 2 weeks that the car had been sitting at the wrecker service?
Right, and considering how close it is to our home, it just would seem like a courtesy.
All right, so what did you do next?
Again, I reached out to my wife and I explained to her how much it was. And she said that, okay, she says, I'll go ahead and stop at the bank, we'll get the money, and we'll go and pick the vehicle up. I said, well, let me go home first, why don't you come and pick me up, and we'll go down and get the car.
Now, did they tell you that you had to bring any documentation with you to pick up, to reclaim the car?
Well, besides our driver's license for identification, we also had to bring a title or copy of title with us to show ownership.
And is that something that you had with you as you stood there on your first visit, or that's something you had to get?
I had to go back I had to go back home, wait for my wife, and we came back with that.
Right.
That item.
Did you make any assumptions about why the car was left someplace? In other words, what could have happened to have had the car being left someplace?
Overruled. Overruled.
I mean, there's a lot of different things that ran through my mind is why I didn't get a phone call earlier about it, either from the tow yard or possibly even from my daughter. I was just, again, I was at a loss for words, like,
My question was a little convoluted. Did you bring a gas can from home with you?
just because in the past, I've had some experiences with to have a vehicle towed or had to go pick a car up from a friend or whatever it might be, and it was always just a common thing to bring some gas along.
And did you bring some gas along on this occasion?
Yes.
All right, so you went home. Did your wife pick you up at your house?
Yes, I waited for my wife. She arrived within a short period of time, and I had the title and some gas, and we went to the tow yard.
And can you tell us what happened when you got to the tow yard?
Well, again, we met with the same receptionist at the front tow yard, at the front glassed-in area, and we were both asked again the same questions over. Why did it take so long to be noticed? Why was it so much money? Sure, we were both very agitated because money for anyone is at a premium anytime, and that $500 some is just something we didn't understand how it could be so expensive.
Right. Did you stay there and talk to the people about the money, or did your wife do that and you did something else? What did you do?
Both of us, to a point, did. I do remember a gentleman coming to the front glassed area with the receptionist lady and basically was starting to handle the transaction with us. And I remember we came of some kind of agreement that we would pay a certain amount. It wasn't that exact amount that they had first requested to make us happy or just possibly just to get us out of there.
Would it be fair to say that Cindy was rather forceful with the folks that were there?
Well, I believe so. She took more of the conversation because I was, I think, probably more irritated at the inconvenience for both of us having to take time to be there, and it's just a bunch of different things to go through.
Now, so you said a gentleman came to the window. Did you at some point leave with him?
Yes, I'm not sure how long it was we had the conversation, but I do know that after we had made the transaction to pay for the vehicle, I was escorted to the car.
Now, as you approached the car, and again, by the car, we're referring to, let me not assume, did the gentleman take you to the Pontiac Sunfire, the car your daughter drove?
Yes.
As you approached the vehicle, did you smell anything?
Within somewhere probably close to about a 3-foot area of the passenger side of the car, I did smell a pretty strong odor.
What thought did that odor place into your mind?
I was very concerned about the odor. I had smelled something like that some years prior, and I was concerned.
What thought went through your mind?
That particular smell, whenever you smell it, it's something you never forget. It's a very distinct odor.
But was there a concern that came into your mind as you smelled that odor? Maybe I should be more specific.
My mind did race somewhat to the point as because I hadn't seen my daughter or my granddaughter for some time. I did worry that, I did worry about for my daughter or my granddaughter, or both at the same time.
Did you have a thought that they might be in the trunk or in the car, dead?
I was hoping that wasn't the case. I was hoping that everything was okay. I didn't want to believe what I was smelling to a point. I was trying to not think too much ahead of myself.
The odor that you were testifying a moment ago that this reminded you of from your past, was that the odor of a human corpse?
Yes.
Now, when you got to the car, did you have keys?
Yes, we have, for each one of our vehicles, we have at least 2 or 3 different sets of keys that we keep for each vehicle. And yes, I did have a set with me.
Was that a spare set?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? All right. So when you got to the car, what did you do?
I had first made a quick look at the car and see if there's any damage to it. I didn't see anything towards the passenger side or walking around to the front of the vehicle. I did reach towards the driver's handle, and I knew I could see the vehicle was locked, and I did put the key in to unlock it, and just made a quick look inside the interior of the car, the front seats, the back seat.
When you opened the driver's side door, was the odor more intense?
Yes.
Now, looking inside the car, did you see any blood or any indication of anyone having been injured within the car?
No.
Did that make you feel better?
It relieved me a little bit to know that I could not see anything in there as far as my daughter or granddaughter inside, yes.
Did you, then either you or the gentleman you were with use the keys to open the trunk?
Before we even did that, if I might tell you what I did
Sure,
prior to
go right
that.
ahead.
I did reach over to the passenger side window, and I did roll it down, and I did try to start the car almost immediately at that point, and it would turn over very quickly. And I do remember it was either myself or the gentleman in tow yard at the same time talking about the car turning over, and I said, well, looks like it's out of gas. I think he said it probably at the same time.
Okay. All right. And what did you do then?
Got out of the car, and I went back to the trunk of the car. As a matter of fact, as I'm walking back, I'm still looking for any kind of damage on the car at all. And I unlocked just prior to me unlocking the trunk, I don't know if I said it in a high whisper or just a real low tone voice, but I just said, please, God, don't let this be Casey or Caylee.
By that you mean in the trunk?
Yes.
And when you opened the trunk, what did you find?
I opened the trunk, and towards the left side of the, like the rear tail light, and right there, I saw a white bag, and inside the bag I saw a pizza box. I observed maggots myself, a Arm & Hammer plastic container that's liquid for clothing, and there were some other items in there. I did not touch it.
Now let me ask you a question. When the trunk was opened, was the garbage bag opened such that you could see these items without removing it or opening it?
Oh, slightly. I mean, it wasn't pulled exactly tight. I mean, probably, I don't know, probably within maybe a 2 or 3 inch circumference. I'm just going by what memory that I have
Sure.
of that.
Now, at some point, did someone remove the bag from the trunk and open it more to kind of look at what was inside?
All I remember is the tow operator, the gentleman who was with me, he stated to me, he said, well, this has got to be the smell of your car. And he reached inside, and he's the one that grabbed it and pulled it out.
Now, when you opened the trunk and there was no body in there and there was garbage there, how did you feel?
Relieved, looked up, thank God. I felt more relieved that what my senses were telling me wasn't true. I mean, it wasn't the worst that I was thinking.
You didn't find the body in the trunk that you were expecting?
No, I didn't find my granddaughter or my daughter there, so I was very thankful.
So at that point, the gentleman you said removed the bag of garbage. Now, you've given us a description of what was in the bag. You said there was a pizza box and an Arm & Hammer bottle, but how were you able to see that through a 2 or 3 inch opening?
Well, because the bag itself was like a white or vanilla color. It was almost transparent, and I could see the makings of a pizza box. Matter of fact, I could see the Z and the A on pizza.
Okay.
And the Arm & Hammer is very distinctive because it's a yellow container. I think it's like a 64-ounce container or something. I've used that size before. I mean, I knew of that product.
You could sort of see it through the translucent plastic. Is that
Yes.
what you're saying? All right. So now, but you did not actually pick up the bag, correct?
I never touched the bag.
So you don't know how heavy it was or anything?
No,
like
sir, I
that.
do not.
Do you recall what the gentleman did with the bag?
After he had reached in and made the comment again about this being the smell, or he believed that was the smell, he walked over towards a dumpster, and as far as I know, he tossed it in there. I wasn't really observing him about how far it was or anything like that. I know he's the one that tossed it away.
Now, after he, okay, so he tossed the trash out. What happens next?
I remember going back to our other vehicle we'd driven, that my wife and I had driven in, and gotten gas. Came back, put gas in the car with the tow operator with us, or with me. Started the car. I remember it starting to rain that day. I kept the windows down a little bit and drove it to where my wife was at the front gates, and probably within a few minutes, we left.
Now, when you put gas in the car, got back in and drove it, the garbage bag was already out. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was the smell out?
No, the smell was still very strong.
Did you have to go to an extraordinary efforts to be able to drive the car and stand the smell?
I drove pretty much home, which, like I said, which is in a mile, maybe a mile and a half from our home, with the windows practically all the way down.
Could you have driven the car with the windows up because of the smell? Or?
Oh, absolutely not. No, there'd been no way.
All right. So as you were driving out, you said you met up with your wife at the gate.
Yes.
Did you comment to her about the smell at all? Do you recall?
I don't know if I commented at that point. All I remember is telling her, I says, we need to get this car home. I just want to get out of here. I just was in an emotional state at that time. I just wanted to get going. I just wanted to leave that area.
Now, let me ask you sort of a preface question. We talked about on the 24th that you indicated, I believe, that you weren't all that concerned about Caylee being missing on the 24th. Was your emotion in terms of your concern about Caylee and maybe Casey greater on the 15th when you were dealing with the car? Were you more worried?
If you're talking about me going back to the 24th of June till July 15th, oh yeah, my feelings got a little bit more strong because I had not seen Caylee since the 16th of June. The last time I saw Casey was the 24th of June. And my concern, I had a lot more concern about not seeing them.
Do you recall when you were walking with the tow truck manager, the gentleman that escorted you to the car, commenting to him about, Caylee or Casey or your concerns? Do you recall if you did?
We probably had some conversation. I don't remember the exact extent of it. I probably did mention something about my daughter and granddaughter. I probably did. That conversation I do not exactly remember today.
If you don't remember, that's fine. So, when you got home, approximately what time of day was it?
I would say roughly maybe 2 o'clock or shortly thereafter.
So when you got home, what did you do?
Well, my wife followed me home. I immediately pulled into our garage and opened up the sunroof on the car, the windows, the hood, the trunk.
Why did you open all the windows and trunk and the sunroof?
To air the car out, to try to diffuse that, that smell. Plus it was raining outside. I couldn't leave the car outside in the rain.
Sure. All right. So you opened the car up to try and air out this smell.
Yes.
What else did you do?
Had some conversation with my wife about why the vehicle was there, why we haven't talked to Casey, worrying about Caylee. There was just a bunch of different things that we talked about. Also being worried about going to my new job. I mean, it's just a bunch of different things that we conversed about.
Now, at either the tow yard or when you got back to the house, did you notice before I ask, let me preface with this. Did you have a role in maintaining your daughter's car traditionally?
I was the one who washed all the cars and vacuumed them during, basically I usually did it on a weekend, for all of our vehicles. Even when my son used to live with us, I did his car too.
So would you regularly, prior to June 16th, obviously the last time you saw Casey, but prior to that, would you normally have maintained the car, vacuumed it, cleaned it, all that kind of thing?
Oh, yes. Changed oil, rotated tires. That was my thing to do.
That was dad stuff.
Yes.
Now, when either at the tow yard or when you got back to the house, did you notice a stain on the spare tire cover in the trunk that you had never seen before?
I noticed a slight circular type stain about where the spare tire was at. I mean, it was slight, but I did notice something, and yes.
And you said it was a slight stain. I mean, how visible was it? Was it fairly subtle, or?
It was somewhat subtle. I mean, it wasn't anything like it was black or anything like that in color. I mean, it was something subtle that I could see. It was just probably about the size of a basketball. I'm just roughly guessing on size.
And if you can help us out with this, did it look like there had been some liquid spilled on it or fluid spilled on it, something like that kind of stain, or like a... I didn't finish the question, actually.
Mr. Anthony, before you answer the question, don't answer it until I tell you to answer it. Finish your question, Mr. Ashton.
The rest of the question was, or was it something that looked like something like powdery on the surface?
Mr. Bias, you have an objection?
Yes, I would object to leading.
Objection overruled. You may answer the question.
If you can, sir.
To me, it was just a circular motion. I mean, I'm sorry, but it was just almost like a circle size, like it's a basketball. As far as it being liquidy or powdery, no, that I couldn't really say for sure, no.
All right, fair enough. Now, the interior of the car, you told us you looked into it, you also drove it. Did the interior of the car appear to be in a normal condition?
Oh, absolutely not. The car was messy inside.
Maybe by your standards. Let me just show you a couple of photographs. If we could have, let me see if this is going to work here. Apparently my controller is not wanting to function. Okay, well, I think I've got it. Hold on. Let me see. Okay. All right, thank you. It is working now. If I could have State's Exhibit Identification I. Oh, did I have to switch it to? I thought it was the way around. Okay, thank you. Sir, can you see the photograph before you?
Yes.
All right. Do you recognize what it's a photograph of?
It appears to be the inside of our Pontiac Sunfire.
Is that, and that appears to be the sort of through the passenger door, but of the passenger seat and a few items on the
Yes.
seat. Does that fairly and accurately depict the appearance of the car when you picked it up at the tow yard, as far as what was in the car and its general state?
Yes.
This time, Your Honor, I move into evidence State's Exhibit I for identification.
What says the defense?
No objections.
It will be admitted into evidence. It states numbered.
May I publish?
You may publish.
This thing is being stubborn again. There we go. Now, the items in this we see appear to be is that a CD case in the middle there of the seat?
Yes.
Looks like a pair of sunglasses.
Yes.
And what do you know what that brown thing is? Do you remember?
Looks like a brown belt.
All right. As far as the rest of the car goes, it's a level of cleanliness that is the way it appeared that day. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Yes, please, unpublish it for me, Judge. Thank you. All right, if we could go to State's Exhibit J. All right, sir, do you see State's Exhibit J on your screen?
Yes.
Right. And do you recognize this as a photograph of the back seat of the Pontiac Sunfire?
Yes.
And does that fairly and accurately depict the appearance of the back seat when you picked it up from Johnson's record?
Yes.
This time, Your Honor, move into evidence State's Exhibit J for identification.
What says the defense?
Objections, Judge.
It would be admitted as states numbered.
And if, let me see if I can publish. May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to do it. This is not cooperating. All right, so, sir, what we see here is appears to be a child's car seat.
Yes.
Do you recognize that as being the car seat that Caylee would traditionally use when riding in her mother's car?
Yes.
And I believe there appear to be a pair of shoes or two back there. Is that what that is?
Looks like a pair of black high heel shoes.
Okay. And again, in terms of relative cleanliness, that's how it appeared that day. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, in addition to the garbage bag that was in the trunk, do you recall either from your view at the tow yard or when you got it home if there were other things in the trunk?
At this time, I can't remember what else might have been in the trunk. I really don't remember.
That's fine. So when you got the car home, did you then go to work?
Probably within maybe a half hour to 40 minutes. I know my schedule generally started at 3 o'clock, and Cindy was concerned because of my new job. I was concerned too, and it was a sort of a double-edged sword that day for me to go into work because I didn't want to leave, but I at least wanted to make an appearance anyhow at work. So yes, I did go to work.
Did Cindy indicate that she was going to take any action based upon finding this car and all the facts that you've told us? What was her plan of action, if she stated one, for the rest of that day?
Question calls for yes or no answer.
Yes.
What was that plan?
That she would try to get a hold of Casey.
No further questions at this time, subject to recall.
Okay, before we proceed to cross-examination, I think it's a time to take a afternoon recess. Short one or special one? Okay, we'll take a recess to 1:15.
Mr. Anthony, you testified that you received the notice from the tow yard on what day?
It was found at our front door on July 13th.
Your Honor, may I have the witness stand down?
Yes.
Can you please mark for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the date and write tow yard receipt? Now, you heard Mr. Birch testify that the receipt was sent out.
Testimony of another.
Let him finish the question, Mr. Anthony. Before you answer the question, don't answer it unless I tell you to.
I'll rephrase it.
You may finish the question.
Yes, I'll rephrase it, Judge.
Okay.
Mr. Anthony, you're aware that the letter was sent from the tow yard company around the 4th of July. Is that correct?
Question, sir.
I presume it was. I'll say yes.
Okay. So that would have arrived more or less at your home on July 7th.
Speculation, and I do have an additional objection at the bench.
As to speculation, it'll be sustained.
you testified that the tow yard is 1.5 miles from your home.
Roughly, yes.
In your experience, sir, do you know how long the mail takes to get from 1.5 miles if someone sent you a letter? If you know, sir.
Overall, he can say how long it takes him to get mail.
I have no idea how long it would take. I can't answer that honestly. I don't know.
You have no idea. You can't assist the ladies and gentlemen in the jury in telling how long it takes to get a letter from 1.5 miles away?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustain.
Now, this was not noticed, and you testified that Cindy's the one that found the letter, or the notice, I should say.
Yes.
And where exactly was this notice placed?
The notice was placed at our front door.
So, where exactly on the front door, if you can explain?
I didn't see the exact location, but I'm thinking that was placed possibly in the crease of our screen, our front glass door, and our inner door.
And the entire week of July 6th through the 12th, you never used your front door?
No, sir, we do not use our front door that's not our main entrance.
And you also could never see that notice from the street?
No, sir.
Okay. And were there any other documents or papers on the door?
No.
Just that one piece of, I guess, orange piece of paper?
If I'm not mistaken, it's like a yellowish in color, real light vanilla yellowish in color.
Okay.
United Postal Service.
And it is you who usually gets the mail, right?
Yes, we have residential mail delivered down the street.
And Cindy works pretty early. She leaves the house early and comes home later in the early evening hours, correct?
5, 6 o'clock, I believe that was her general schedule.
And you're home all day and leave roughly around 3 in the afternoon.
No, about 2 or 2:15, right around in there.
Okay. You testified that your work was 10 minutes away?
At the time this started to occur, I just had finished up with one position, and I had started working for another new company.
And generally, you pick up the mail.
The mail, if I might answer your question and just give you a little bit of information, that I have no control of what time the mail service is delivered. Sometimes it can be delivered in the early afternoon. It might not be till later in the afternoon. I have no control over that.
I didn't ask if you had control over it, sir. I asked you if you generally pick up the mail.
Yes.
Now, have you ever gotten one of these notices before?
Oh, numerous times over the years.
Okay. And have you ever had problems with the post office as to them failing to deliver things to you?
Not that I can remember, no.
And this entire week, after you weren't home, or were you home that week during the day? I should ask you that first.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe my wife was on vacation that week, or we had spent some additional time together away from work. As far as going to the front door every day, I don't do that.
You spent the night, every night, at 4937 Hope Spring Drive between July 6th to July 12th, correct?
I believe so, yes, I'm sure we did.
And that entire week, if it had arrived earlier, well, let me strike that. That entire week, all you got is one notice.
I don't remember all the mail that we got for that week.
My question to you, sir, is that entire week, all you got was one notice that your car was towed.
Yes.
You didn't get a notice the second day saying, hey, you haven't picked up this is your second notice from the post office, did you?
Not in evidence that a second notice was sent.
Sustain.
May I rephrase the question, Judge?
You may.
You never received a second notice from the post office.
Sustain.
Are you aware if a second notice ever arrived at your home?
No.
Are you aware if a third notice ever arrived at your home?
No.
Are you aware if you received something that said final notice?
It's a fact,
That's right.
not in evidence.
Sustain.
Are you aware if you got any other notices, sir?
Assumes a fact, not in evidence.
Overrule as to that question.
You'd like to ask me that again, since there was,
Are you aware if you received any final notice at your home?
Are you aware if you got any other notices?
I'm sorry, Judge. Are you aware if you received any other notices at your home?
no.
So the only notice that was delivered, as far as you're aware, to your home that entire week was one notice.
Yes.
And you can clearly see the front door of your home from the street, can you not?
Yes.
It's not backed off in a corner or anything.
It's back off the road somewhat. I mean, we have almost like a U-shaped home, I guess, to a point, or C-shaped home. Our front door is back a little bit, set in.
You can see the front door if you're standing in your driveway, can you not?
Basically, yes.
Now, when you testified under direct, I didn't hear you say that you had actually called Amscott on that day. Did you, sir?
I wasn't asked that question.
I'm asking you now. Did you, sir?
I know I called Amscott later that afternoon after I got into my work. After I inquired about the car. I did.
After you got after you got to work, you said?
Yes, I think it was shortly in the early evening. I was curious about that.
And this was after you drove the car home and went to work?
Yes.
Did you call Mr. Birch afterwards to let him know that you called the Amscott?
No.
So there's no way Mr. Birch would have known that you called Amscott.
Correct.
And there's no way that Mr. Birch would know that you were aware that the car had been there for 3 days.
Objection assumes a fact, not in evidence. Witness hasn't been asking you that.
Sustain.
Did you tell Mr. Birch that the car had been there for 3 days?
No.
Now, you testified that you went home and were waiting for Cindy to meet you to go to the tow yard, correct?
Yes.
And that you had taken gas cans because that's what you usually do.
A past experience told me to take some gas and along with the other identification I would need for the car. Yes.
And what tow yard have you ever gone to pick up a car with gas cans?
I've been to, I don't know how many tow yards in my life to pick up a car through their friend or through a family business. So, I mean, I'm very knowledgeable of what to do.
And you just had lucky thinking that the car was going to be out of gas?
Objection. Argumentative, move to strike.
Mr. Baez.
I don't think it's argumentative, Judge.
Sustain.
Was it a lucky guess, sir, that the car...
Objection.
Sustain.
It was a fortunate guess that the car was out of gas.
Same objection, same question.
I'll
Sustain.
move on, Judge. Did the gas can that you took to the tow yard have duct tape on it?
I don't remember which gas can I took with me. I don't.
Did you take the round cylinder gas can that was 20 years old with you?
I don't remember which gas can I took, sir.
So because you don't remember that, you certainly don't remember if at that point in time you didn't, that gas can didn't have duct tape on it at that time.
Sir, I don't remember what gas can I took
My question to you,
that particular day. I don't
my
remember.
question to you, sir, is at that point in time, you have no recollection as to whether on June 15, 2008, that gas can, the round cylinder for 20 years that you've had duct tape on it.
Would you like to repeat the date that you just told me,
July
sir?
15, 2008, when you went to the tow yard with the gas can, do you know if the round cylinder gas tank that you've had for 20 years had duct tape on it?
I don't remember what gas can I took with me, sir.
I'm not asking you which one you took with you, sir. I'm asking you, did the round cylinder gas can that you've had for 20 years have duct tape on it on July 15, 2008?
Asked and answered to the best of his ability.
Sustained.
Your Honor, I think the witness said he doesn't recall which gas cans he took. I'm asking him a
That's the
separate question.
precise problem. He said he doesn't know which one he took, and you asked him for a particularized gas can.
Correct, and I'm asking him at that time.
And he said he didn't know which one he took.
Now, you hadn't spoken to Casey since June 24th, correct?
The last time I saw Casey was June 24th, yes.
My question to you was, you hadn't spoken to Casey since June 24th, 2008.
To the best of my recollection, yes. I don't know if we text or anything at that particular time. I don't know. I don't remember. But the last time I saw her was the 24th of June. I talked to her.
As far as you can remember, it had been three and a half weeks since you spoke to your daughter?
Yes.
And when you arrived at the tow yard, you were very concerned for your granddaughter,
Yes.
the most precious thing in your life,
Yes.
the two most precious things in your life.
Yes.
In fact, you were telling people about your missing granddaughter.
No.
You didn't tell anyone at the tow yard that your granddaughter was missing.
If I'm not mistaken, through maybe some small conversation or whatever I talked to the tow operator was, I hadn't seen my granddaughter or my daughter.
You
I
told,
did not know my granddaughter was missing, sir, at that time.
you told people at the tow yard that you were concerned for your granddaughter's well-being.
I believe, sir, that I've said is I hadn't seen my granddaughter or my daughter. Yeah, I'm concerned for them, yeah, because I haven't seen them.
And you were concerned about their well-being.
Yes, sir.
And you were telling people this at the tow yard.
I can only think of one person, and I told them that was the tow gentleman, the manager that was there.
And that was before you ever got to the car.
If we had that conversation prior to that I don't remember. If we had some small talk going in there, I don't remember that conversation.
And this is after the July 3rd weekend, or the 4th of July weekend, when your son Lee had gone to downtown to look for Casey.
Well, the 15th of July, yes, is definitely after the 4th of July. Yes, sir, I'll agree.
So there were active participation on behalf of your wife and your son to find Casey.
Yes, sir.
And at this point in your life, on this day, you're distraught, concerned.
Concerned? Yes.
In fact, you told Mr. Ashton that you were at an elevated state, of course, because as compared to the 24th.
I was a lot more concerned than I was on the 24th, yes.
And when you got into the car, you smelled the smell of human decomposition.
Yes.
A smell you never forget.
Correct? Yes.
A distinctive smell.
Yes.
One that you have smelled as a detective many times.
Yes.
And when you got in that car, you asked, before you opened the trunk, you asked Mr. Birch to walk around with you and open the trunk with you.
I did not ask him to come around to the back of the car with me, no, sir.
Do you recall giving a statement to law enforcement on July 24th, sir, of 2008?
I've given statements, yes, to the Sheriff's Department before, yes.
Page 23, counsel. Lines 20 and 21. Did you make the statement, sir? Will you please walk around? I told the guy, will you please walk around to the back of the car?
Just a second. Mr. Ashton?
90.8 of 108, I'd ask that the counsel read the entire paragraph, entire statement. to put
Yes,
it in
sir.
context.
Yes, sir. I will be more than happy to. Did you make the statement? You know that I smell, I'm like, oh God. I tried to start the car for a second time and I said, no, George, there's something wrong. You got to find out now. You can't take it away.
Your Honor, objection, could we approach?
Yes.
May I begin again, Your Honor?
You ready? You ready? You may proceed.
You know I've smelled like, you know, and I smell and I'm like, oh God. I tried to start the car for a second and I said, no, George, if there's something wrong, you need to find out now. You can't take it away. I told the guy, I said, will you please walk around to the back of the car and look inside this with me? Do you recall making that statement, sir?
That's probably what I said. I don't remember saying that, but if that's what I said to law enforcement at the time, it probably was the truth.
And the reason you wanted him to walk around the back with you is because you wanted a witness.
I guess that could be a true statement.
You wanted to distance yourself from all of this.
Objection, objection, argumentative. Pardon me, objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
You wanted to distance yourself from all of this.
I don't understand what you mean by distance myself, sir. I don't understand what you mean.
You didn't want to be associated with any evidence in this case, did you, sir?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
If I might answer your question a little bit in length.
Go right ahead, sir.
Okay.
But please answer the question.
Okay, I will. I did not know at that time that my granddaughter and daughter, or my granddaughter was missing, or my daughter was not available to be found. I didn't know that, anything like that. As far as asking someone to go to the rear of a vehicle with me, if I did ask him that, then I must have asked him that. Was I trying to distance myself from something? No. If there was something wrong and I needed to get to the bottom of it, I would have been a stand-up guy and would have taken care of it. I would have not walked away or ran away from something if I really thought there was something really, really bad there. No, sir, that's not my makeup.
Because you're a stand-up guy.
I believe I am. I think I'm a pretty good guy.
And now, once you had your witness and your granddaughter's missing and you smell that smell that you never forget, the trunk is opened.
Objection. Argument. Move to strike. Counsel's editorial commentary.
Sustained, rephrase the question.
You then open the trunk.
Yes, I opened the trunk.
And you smell the smell of human decomposition.
I already had the smell, sir, and I opened up the trunk with this gentleman alongside with me to see what was back there.
And you smelled a more pungent smell of human decomposition.
To be honest, at that point, all I found, sir, in the back of the trunk of the car was a bag full of garbage.
Let me go back for a moment. Prior to you opening that trunk, you said a silent prayer.
I probably did.
And you said, under your breath, lightly audible, "Oh, please don't let this be my Casey or Caylee."
Yes, I already said that. Yes, sir.
And then you smelled an even stronger smell of human decomposition.
Sir, I already had smelled it prior to getting into the car and inside the car.
My question to you, sir, is
I'm
you
answering the
smelled
question.
an even stronger smell of human decomposition at that point.
What are you referring to, sir? I'm trying to answer your question.
Once you opened the trunk, sir, you smelled an even stronger smell of human decomposition.
When I opened up the trunk, sir, I just answered your question. I'm answering it a second time. All I found in the back of the trunk of that car was a plastic bag with garbage inside of it. That's what I found, sir.
I'm not asking you what you found, sir. I asked you
answering
if
the question.
when you opened the trunk, you smelled an even stronger smell of human decomposition.
No.
It got weaker.
No.
I'm sorry?
Sir, I've already answered your question. I don't know how many times I've answered in the most popular and polite way that I can. I'm not going to get upset over that with you, sir. You know, if you're trying to trick me, you're not going to trick me. I know what's in the back of that car, and I know what the tow manager pulled out.
My question to you, sir, is
Answered you.
Is it your testimony that when you opened the trunk of that car, the smell of human decomposition was not stronger?
At that point, all I seen, or only thing I smelled, or only thing I saw at that time was a bag full of garbage.
I'm not asking you what you saw, sir. I'm asking you what you smelled. And if you...
Come on.
Mr. Ashton can't help you, sir.
Yes. Question.
You're badgering.
Judge,
No. Question.
It really calls for a yes or no answer. When you opened the trunk of that car, did you smell a stronger smell of human decomposition?
I'm going to answer you again for the fourth time. No.
Okay. Now, you talked about how your experience as a detective allowed you to recognize the smell, correct?
You're the one who brought up my experience, sir, not me. Not I.
Have you testified that as a police officer, you smelled that smell before?
Yes, sir, I have.
And you testified under direct examination that you didn't touch the bag
I did not touch that garbage bag at all.
because you know better than to touch any potential evidence.
I didn't know it would be evidence at this time.
And at that point, when you have been telling Mr. Birch about your missing granddaughter, and you haven't seen your daughter in almost 3 weeks or spoken to her, and you smell that smell in that car, is that when you called 911?
I never called 911.
A young woman that you have, your child, is missing, correct?
My daughter, I didn't know where my daughter was at on that date.
And you're smelling her car that smells like a dead body, and you don't call the police.
No, sir, I did not.
And you don't call your daughter to see if she's okay.
I didn't call my daughter at that time.
And you don't call your daughter to see if Caylee's okay.
I didn't call my daughter to inquire about her or Caylee at that time. I did not.
And as a detective, you know that if you smell a dead body in a car, that's a potential crime scene.
At the time, sir, I wasn't a detective. I am just a father and a grandfather.
As a former detective, as a father, a grandfather, a human being, you're intelligent enough to know that if you smell human decomposition in a car and you have people in your life that are missing, you call the police, don't you, sir?
Objection. Argumentative. Question
Overruled.
asked and answered.
Overruled, you can answer the question.
Looking back, sir, there's a lot of things I wish I could have done and I didn't do. So that's on me.
You call the police, don't you, sir?
Objection. Argumentative. Asked and answered.
Sustain.
You are familiar enough with evidence to know that if you move that car, that you may be destroying potential evidence, don't you, sir?
If that would have been viewed as evidence at that time, all I was thinking about was getting that car out of the tow yard. That was my objective at that time, and finding garbage in the back seat and in the rear, in the trunk area of it.
Did you understand my question, sir?
Yes, sir. I understand it.
Can you please answer it?
You'd like to rephrase it and ask me again, I'd be more than glad to answer it.
You, as a former police officer, know that if you move that car, you're destroying potential evidence.
If I would have thought it was evidence at the time, probably. I didn't believe it was evidence at the time.
And you are no longer concerned about your missing granddaughter.
I was always concerned about my granddaughter, her well-being, where she was at, and my daughter.
And you then drive the car home.
Yes.
You air it out.
Yes.
And you go to work.
Yes.
And you don't call the police from your home.
I did not.
You don't go to work and call the police.
I did not.
You don't tell any of the other security officers at your job, you know, that car smelled like a dead body and I haven't seen my granddaughter in 30 days.
Answered. Argumentative.
Sustain.
You don't tell anyone about your granddaughter being missing at work, do you, sir?
Objection. Asked and answered. Argumentative.
I haven't asked that question.
Overruled.
I didn't mention anything about my personal life to anyone at work. I didn't at that point.
Now, on on that same evening, the police arrived at your home.
Yes.
And that's as a result of your wife calling the police.
Objection. Exceeds the scope of direct.
Sustain.
Since we're talking about the smell of the car, that evening you immediately told law enforcement of the smell, did you not?
Exceeds the scope.
Sustain.
Judge, I would cite Blue v. State at this point. Did you have a conversation, did you ever go after this day to law enforcement to have a private discussion with law enforcement about this car, about the smell of this car?
I don't know if I did or not. I know the car was at our home and towed from our home.
On July 24th, the same statement we had discussed previously, did you go there and did not want your wife or your son to know you were meeting with law enforcement?
Objection. Exceeds the scope of direct.
Overruled at this point.
Anything that I could do to find my granddaughter and or my daughter, I was reaching out any way I could and giving information or having information given back to me to find my granddaughter. I didn't see anything was wrong with that.
So the answer to my question is yes, sir? You did meet with them secretly?
I don't know if the word secretly or we contacted each other somewhere or whatever, but sure, I'd do anything I could to bring my granddaughter home.
You told them you didn't want your wife or your son to know you were there, didn't you,
The
sir?
scope of direct.
Sustain.
When you went and met with them on this date, you told them about your experience in the smell, and smelling that car?
I believe that was part of their investigation.
And do you remember exactly what you said to them, sir, about the smell and your experience in smelling that car?
No, I do not know exactly what we talked about at that time.
Would it refresh your recollection if I showed you the transcript, sir?
Yes?
May I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm showing the witness page 23, lines 2 through 4. You told them, sir, about your experience.
Objection, hearsay. Not inconsistent.
Oh, excuse me. Does that refresh your recollection, sir?
We approach that.
No, not right now.
As far as what my experience would have been, I mean, in that short little section that you showed me right there, sure, I believe I answered that, yes, I had a smell like that outside in the woods, in a house, in a car. I mean, that's, sure, I'll agree.
And this is 6 months before your granddaughter is found in the woods.
Objection. Hearsay. We approach.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, you may proceed.
Mr. Anthony, the reason you drove that car home and didn't call the police and went to work is because you knew Caylee was dead already, didn't you, sir?
He can answer that question.
No, I did not.
And you knew, sir, that if you distanced yourself and was at work, that you would be the last person questioned about the death of Caylee, didn't you, sir?
No, sir.
You know, as a former detective, that the best way to not be questioned or to not make statements about a case is to be as far away removed as possible, didn't you, sir?
Sustain as to that question.
Judge, we will recall this witness at a later time.
Okay. Any redirect, Mr. Ashton?
No, you leave. Thank you. Mr. Anthony, what date was that certified mail receipt placed on your door?
If I'm not it had to have been before Sunday, so I'm just,
You don't know who you
I really don't know. I'm presuming it should have been a few days prior to that. I don't know.
Now, I want to follow up on some of Mr. Baez's questions to you.
Commentary?
Overruled.
He asked you about distancing yourself from a piece of evidence in this case. Remember that question?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Judge, I can't hear Mr. Ashton.
I'll go back over. Mr. Baez asked you a question about distancing yourself from evidence in this case. You recall that question?
Yes.
Well, let me tell you a hypothetical. If Caylee Anthony drowned, and then you took her body out of that house and disposed of in a field, then
Yes.
Leading?
He hasn't finished asking the question. It's hypothetical. Mr. Anthony, before you answer the question, don't answer the question until I tell you to. And then at the conclusion of the question, you have an opportunity to object, Mr. Baez. Continue.
if you took that little girl's body and took it down and dumped it in the swamp, then there'd be no evidence in her car, would there?
Objection, Judge. Outside the scope.
Overruled.
There wouldn't be, would there?
No, sir, there wouldn't be.
So it would be nothing for you to run away from, would there?
Objection, Judge. Leading.
Withdrawn.
Okay, may the witness stand down.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Baez? Yes, sir, what? Can he stand down? That was what I asked. Okay, Mr. Anthony, you may step down.